Good evening, everyone. We're Team 1. My name's Eric Cox. With me is Stephen Interazzi and Kenneth Spry. Our project is based on a interactive guide application for the Indianapolis Zoo. The project scope and setting, our focus was to enhance the overall experience while visiting the zoo. This application is applicable to zoos of all shapes and sizes, but we designed it specifically for the Indianapolis Zoo. The application is designed to also utilize the worldwide popularity of the iPhone or iPad as a iPad app or iPhone app. The project scope, for us, we found that visitors for many zoos lack the content-rich, interactive, robust experience that they desire while visiting the zoo, and it's designed to be an additional benefit to zoo members. The application envelops two phases, or what we call modes, a browsing mode and a guided mode, and both phases look to enhance the use of time while visiting. In both of those modes, the application will effectively enhance the user's ability to plan and navigate through their visit, utilizes self-designed and self-customized tours, the ability to save those tours for future use, and let the visitor attain a sense of situational awareness with proximal information. The application will also provide supplemental information not available at the point of the exhibit. Things like the animal ecosystem info and the ability to share some zoo content such as photos and coloring books that they can share via Twitter, Facebook, or email those back to themselves. Steve?
So just a few quick notes about the process of the contextual inquiries or contextual interviews. It was winter, so the zoo, a lot of things are shut down because the animals don't want to be out there in the cold. That turned out to show us a lot of the problems with the zoo and things that they could kind of improve on as far as informing the users of things. Who we observed 3 total entities. 2 of them are families. One was very familiar with the zoo, one not so familiar. And another one, entity, was an individual who was also very familiar with the zoo. A few key points about the results of the actual interviews itself. The maps that they got were barely used. They never really referenced them at all as they were walking around the zoo. They wanted to know where they were, but they just never thought about going to the map, or the map provided so much content overload that they just never referenced it. Visitors knew that because it's winter, a lot of the exhibits would be closed, but they didn't know until they got there. So that kind of created some agitation. They wanted to find out more information about the animals than what was on the plaques. Information about the show times, so there's exhibits and shows, right? The show times weren't really made available to them until they reached the show. So sometimes they'll get there and show's been on for 10 minutes, they missed 10 minutes of it, it's only a 30-minute show, they have to wait 2 more hours to get the whole show. All of the visitors agreed that this idea of having a camera to show them the animal in the exhibit when it's hiding, like behind a cave or underwater or something, would be a benefit. And also the idea of preset tours on this mobile device to allow them to kind of designate which exhibits they want to see in what order and then plan out their trip for them was a good idea. That's an example of the map in Figure 1. Never really used it. That's a physical map, you know, in the zoo, but they never used it. Show times were only displayed on the sign, so they didn't know it from the map, from anything else. They just had to see it when they got to the actual show. And then half the time, at least our visitors, they couldn't really see the animals. Like the polar bear would hide behind the cave, so you have to stand there for 10, 15 minutes, wait for it to come back out.
Now, from our data collected, we came up with three specific work activity models. The first one, which was the cultural model, and in analyzing this model, it emerged that the zoo exhibits were the most influential stakeholder, the zoo itself. This cultural model actually showed us breakdowns of communication between stakeholders, whereas visitors were wanting to learn more, wanting to be able to take that information that they have and share it via different medias that they choose from. The consolidated flow model, again, our primary players are the patrons and the zoo exhibits. The interactions between those two revolve around the exhibit content and those experiences that they have. And our design, in looking at this flow model, we hope to ease the access of the supplemental information to provide a smoother, more enjoyable experience. In gathering our notes into an affinity diagram, we discovered a couple key findings. One is the information at the zoo should supplement the user's experience during their visit, and also should help guide the user to enhance their experience.
Okay, you can go ahead and click on it.
Okay.
So for our requirements and goals, we wanted to create a flexible, visually compelling, and informative application that was still understandable to the general public no matter what the age. So we wanted to include as little reading as possible and audio when possible, and show as much information visually as we can via maps or other things like symbols, and make it flexible. We want the user to be followed by the application rather than the user navigating through the application as they simultaneously navigate through the zoo. We wanted to make it intuitive and enjoyable. We wanted to invite the user to explore the application in various ways. We also wanted the user to share the experience or experience the zoo themselves afterward by sharing it via Facebook or email or downloading it. And make the zoo come to life. We wanted to include videos, things that would enhance the overall experience of the user at the zoo, and reduce frustration of zoogoers in general just by including information about refreshments, restroom locations, things of that nature.
All right. So our conceptual model kind of focused on the two areas Eric was kind of alluding to, as far as a guided mode and a browsing mode. So our guided mode really gave the user a sense of a virtual tour guide in their hand as they're navigating through the zoo. Browsing mode was more of an interactive mobile website for when they're not necessarily actively going around the zoo. The two modes, as far as conceptual diagrams, look very similar. The main differences being the direction of the flow. So from the guided mode or the virtual tour, it comes from the exhibits out. So mainly the guided tour was done by area. So as the user is walking, it updates continuously on where they currently are. And then the browsing mode generally comes out of the general zoo. So it's, again, that website type feel where you're gathering information, not necessarily important to where you are. And that one has navigation structures by geography, climate, things like that. Kind of standard hierarchical structure.
Here are some differences between the two models. Here's an early example of the browsing model and the guided model, and we had to consolidate these. Obviously, these two pages showcase the same source of content, but they needed to be reconciled. We also decided to condense these two pages into one so that the user would get less confused about having two different home pages to navigate back toward. Here we had a troublesome multiple topic choice. Here is, we wanted to show visually where the animals were located on the map, but it turned out to cluster the animals together a little too much or leave them isolated. So we also decided here in the create a tour area we have the option to select or create a tour, and we decided to divide that up to make it clearer that there were two distinct options.
Now we're going to walk you through a couple
Eric,
scenarios of the actual interactive prototype itself.
Okay. So this is the home page, and we'll take you to the guided home. And this presents a map, and this is you, indicated by the arrow. We'll create or select a tour here. And here are some basic instructions for what you should do. And by clicking on an area, it will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. And connect the dots for you, give you a path to follow. So with that, we'll see the coral fishes, which is suggested to us by where we are on the map, and we'll click on coral fishes to see more content. And you can view pictures, you can view a coloring page that you can also share.
And this idea of being able to share it is true for any image basically in the prototype. You can click it and share it on Facebook or email.
And we'll take you back to the browsing home so that you can see the content in a slightly different way, but with content that wasn't privy to you before. So we clicked on fishes to search by animal type, and it gives us more information about fishes in general, and it also gives us some instances of fish at the zoo. So we'll take you back to the guided home actually, and learn about the polar bear. Here we have the habitat indicated on the map, and we can view the ecosystem there. And from here we can view the animal as well. And here is, this exhibit offers camera views that you can look at, and it also notices that you're approaching the dolphin exhibit now. So if you would like, you can click on that and visit the dolphins. And these are unique in that there are many of them, and they each have their own individual names and stories and things like that that would be nice to share, especially to donors. And that's pretty much the walkthrough. Where is the...
Bottom right. Bottom right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So our usability test involved two users, 2 tasks, and post-task questionnaire. Positive feedback that we received was that the navigation interface was intuitive. The users liked the additional exhibit proximal and services info, and enjoyed the option to create and or save a personalized tour. A couple primary examples of negative feedback in our design. The supplemental exhibits info as they reached each exhibit was hard to find. The information was showing on the bottom of the page, but it was navigational links that they weren't aware were supplemental info for them. And also they would like to see recommended exhibits to help guide their visit when they arrive. So our recommendations based on that feedback is our redesign focused on those to where we created proximal pop-up exhibit info as you approached each exhibit, and created an animal of the day info as an avenue to highlight certain exhibits during certain times of the year.
And some of the shortcomings is we haven't yet designed for ticket purchasing. We imagine it to be much the same as any other ticket purchasing system. We also haven't designed the zoo application store. We expect it to be kind of more of a browsing type situation rather than purchasing, so we put it on the back burner. And we also were unable to devise a clean way to really show the crowdedness at the exhibits. We thought of cameras, we thought of dots represented by other iPad devices, but we realized that not everyone's going to actually have this device, and it could be misleading to users. So it's not undoable, but we didn't do it. So with that, any questions?
Questions? Yes.
What inspired your design for your domain for this project?
Well, I think because mobile technology is becoming more widespread, the thought of giving a visitor a more intuitive, interactive way to enjoy the zoo, bringing their group in and just kind of fumbling through what's there. And of course, space limitations for info, crowds, and kind of a way to give our visitors a way to take information with them from their experience. Kind of my thought was school field trips for teachers. They'd be able to take some content back to the classroom and be able to share that through ongoing lessons. So things of that nature.
In addition, the map is really the heart of the application. We had to include some extra things in the browsing mode to make it more interesting so that people would be more likely to browse and find other content. But the map was how we envisioned showcasing as much information as we could, visually, not textually, and easily.
And one last thing, one thing we identified with the Indianapolis Zoo, one thing we identified with the Indianapolis Zoo is that it's a small zoo. So this type of application can be made available for zoos like San Diego, things like that, bigger zoos. In Indianapolis, maybe you wouldn't use it as much because it's such a small zoo, but bigger zoos, you'd probably need that sense of guidance through the zoo.
I was just wondering why you stopped there, just like the zoo. Why not? There's the museum right next door to the zoo. I mean, if you were focusing just on Indianapolis at the time, I think it would work really great for, if, like you said, for a teacher on a field trip, had their day planned out, the zoo, the museum, and then would follow the app in each one.
It's definitely, applicable to a lot of domains. I think maybe in HCI 3 we can go after that one. But for the context of the class, we just focused on the zoo.
My only question is, how did you guys, when you were doing the contextual inquiry, did you guys follow these people totally in the zoo through their entire trip, or did you just choose one location?
Yes, we followed them wherever they wanted to go. We were led by them, and we asked them along the way, like, what they normally do in the zoo. And like the person I followed, he said that he usually is not the leader, but he usually follows others. But I just told him to.
Which is kind of the concept of the application in itself, where it's this companion with you as you go through the zoo. We call it a guide, but it's supplemental. You could use it, you don't have to use it. But if you want to get additional information, it's right there at your fingertips. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
How much time did it take on average following one user? Was it?
We were there for a few hours. Yeah.
Mine actually, I broke it up into two. I spent a couple hours with them in the morning, broke away to allow them to gather lunch and kind of clear their heads and think of their afternoon, because I wanted to see what they did throughout the entire day. So I met back with them in the afternoon.
I like the application because I always get lost in the zoos. So, but the problem that I always have is the time estimation. For example, how much does it take to see, for example, the specific place, or how much does it take to go there? Should I, for example, have something and then go and see up there or not? I think it would be good if you could add this feature.
Well, we agree, but naturally, like with different groups, you're going to have varying sizes, and it'll take maybe longer or less time depending on the group size. So it could be difficult. We did include some features that were time. Yeah. But like the countdown to the show times and things like that, so you wouldn't get lost or forget about certain things. But
and one thing we don't want to kind of override is that experience of going around the zoo. I mean, we don't want half the time to be looking at the exhibits, half the time to be in this device as you're walking around. So still, it gives you that freedom to still enjoy the exhibit as you would without this device, but have it there in case you need it.
As far as the platform is concerned, I observed that it was an iPad-looking device. Two questions. Did you find out from the users that you observed if they actually had an iPad-like device? Or second, do you anticipate logistically the iPad device being available to rent at the zoo?
Yes, that's one thing that we thought of in first designing this was be kind of a members-only benefit, to where if you get a membership, then you've got the ability to check one of these devices out from the zoo if you don't currently have one, to help supplement that visit.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you. Team 2.